it's Jessii Vee, and today I have my Casper shirt on. I used to love Casper when I was a kid. He's like the cutest ghost ever. So you probably saw the thumbnail of today's video and thought, wow, that's extremely creepy. I mean, yeah, imagine walking through a graveyard and seeing a gravestone with a window in it. Would you look inside? Would you run away? Would you stand there in shock? Today we're going to be talking about some really weird and creepy things that people have seen in cemeteries and graveyards, and we're also going to be talking about some very eerie gravestones. Now, I just want to firstly say we're not going to be making fun of any of these gravestones just because people were buried there and we have to be respectful still. Most of the ones we're going to talk about are hundreds and hundreds of years old. Okay, so let's start with the grave that this whole video is about. This is the mysterious final resting place of Dr. Timothy Clark Smith. So the question that most people ask is, why is there a window on his grave? Here's the creepy reason. Back in the 18th and 19th century, people were often mistakenly buried alive. They didn't have the proper tests back then to really determine if someone was dead. So if someone looked dead, if they weren't responding, if it didn't look like they were breathing, a lot of the times they were buried, and sometimes that person would wake up underground and they were buried. This spontaneous act of waking up after you've been buried is called the Lazarus syndrome. It is described as the spontaneous return of circulation after failed attempts at resuscitation. What is even creepier is that there have been coffins taken out of the ground hundreds of years later and there's scratch marks inside of them. So people really did have a strong fear. They did not want this to happen to them. So Timothy Clark Smith decided to design his own grave that had a window in it just in case he woke up and had to like call for help, or if someone looked in and saw him struggling. It was more for safety reasons. It's still there to this day, and people often go up with flashlights and look through the window. What's kind of eerie is that this doctor actually died on Halloween. He was put into the grave that he designed for himself, and as far as people know, he never woke up. His grave can be found at Evergreen Cemetery in New Haven, and it looks just like it did hundreds of years ago. The only thing is that if you look at the window, it's kind of foggy, there's mold growing around the edges. The window doesn't look as clear as it used to. What's creepy is that many visitors of this graveyard often claim to see a green light glowing from the window of his grave. But yeah, it's still there. People still go and visit it, so let me know down below if you would actually go visit and look through that window. As brave as I am when it comes to paranormal stuff and creepy stuff like that, I don't know if I could. The next really creepy thing we're gonna talk about is called a Morte Safe. In the Victorian age, people were putting cages over burial plots. People were really confused as to why these were made. They thought maybe it was in case the dead rose again and tried to like walk around as zombies. The cages would like keep them contained and wouldn't let them walk around. But that's not actually the reason. A Morte Safe is an iron coffin or framework which protected a grave to prevent the body from being dug up and taken away for medical research. So it was actually to protect the body and not to protect the people from zombies. The next grave we're gonna talk about is the one of Inez Clark. This is actually a really sad story. She lived from 1873 to 1880. Her grave is currently in Chicago, USA, and it says, Inez Clark was a 6-year-old girl struck and killed by a bolt of lightning in 1880. I mean, what a sudden way to go. Imagine you're just walking outside and lightning strikes you. On top of her grave is a life-size sculpture of Inez, seated on a bench, wearing a lace dress and holding a parasol and a flower. The artwork was commissioned by her parents, and it was put in this glass box to protect it, because often people like to touch statues issues, which does ruin them after a while, and also just to protect it from weather and stuff. Now, the reason why I'm bringing up her grave is because there's a lot of paranormal activity that surrounds it. Usually, if a parent takes their kid to visit this cemetery, it says kids will often tell their parents they've been playing with a young girl dressed in old-fashioned clothes, and they'll always say it when they're really close to her grave. I don't even find anything super creepy about that. I feel like it's more sad. I feel really bad for her story. But I guess you would get a slight eerie feeling if your kid told you that. The next grave is called Head in Hands. This is a striking bronze gravestone in the world-famous Père Lachaise Cemetery. The sculpture is of an actor and musician, Fernand Arbelot, who died in 1942. Little is known about this man, but it is said that he is holding the face of his wife. It says that he wished to gaze upon her for all eternity. I mean, it's kind of like romantic and stuff, but also like he's only holding her head. There's also a little description on his grave that said they were amazed at the beautiful journey which led them to the end of life. So it's kind of sweet. They obviously were really in love. I just think the sculpture is a little bit unnerving, but it also does have a lot of amazing meaning. This next one really bothers me. It is a grave that says specimens. So there are a bunch of these gravestones in the Ohio Asylum for the Insane. And rather than showing a name or a date, they only say specimens. So no one really knows if it's like people that were experimented on. Could it be like body parts? No one's really sure, but it's definitely a very disturbing thing to see, especially because that asylum had a really bad reputation back in the day. They didn't treat their patients well at all and did a lot of experiments. I know the college I went to actually used to be an insane asylum. I did a whole video on that, I think like 3 years ago. But there were unmarked graves around the college campus that they couldn't move. And the people they buried there only had numbers. They didn't have names, which is so sad. This next one is called the Baby Monster Grave. This is a very mysterious gravestone, and people aren't sure if maybe the last name of this baby was Monster or the first name. Most people think it's probably the description of the baby, which is terrible. It does say that during the time this baby was alive, the word monster describes somebody with a severe deformity. So this baby could have been deformed in some way and was called a monster, which is so sad. Reminds me of Hunchback of Notre Dame. Like, we're all people here, guys. We all deserve love still. What's even more sad though is that this baby was never given a name. It was alive for 5 months, which is a while before giving her baby a name. So it was just buried under Baby Monster. How horrible. Anyways though, guys, those were all of the really intense and eerie graves that I could find online. Like I said before, all these graves do belong to people, so there's no disrespect from me whatsoever. It's just a part of our history and things that people see every day and talk about. But yeah, if I missed any really famous graves, definitely comment them down below. If you would like some Halloween merch, the link is in the description, but I hope you guys have an awesome rest of your day, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!